Last night at 6:35, we received the biggest threat we've ever received from our closest friends and ally, from President-elect Trump, that they're threatening to put a 25% tariff on all goods coming across the border into the U.S.
What happens when two of America's biggest automakers go head-to-head with the president? Ford Motor Company and General Motors are shaking the foundations of American industry with bold moves that are causing an explosive reaction. Why now? How does this battle affect you, your job, and the price of the car you drive? Let's uncover the truth behind this and how it will change the future of American manufacturing. The spark of conflict that for generations these companies have been synonymous with American ingenuity, industry, and employment. Their factories have provided stable jobs, their innovations have shaped the way we travel, and their names have been etched into the very fabric of the nation's history. Now, however, they find themselves at the center of a high-stakes battle that could shake the automotive world to its core. This is not just another corporate disagreement. This is a moment of reckoning that places the future of thousands of jobs and billions of dollars in revenue on the line.
On your block in Macomb County, where General Motors announced it will lay off 1,000 white-collar employees.
The stakes are not confined to boardrooms or political stages. They reach into the lives of everyday Americans, the communities they live in, and the economy they depend on. The question looms large: how did we get here, and what happens next? The answer lies in a complex web of innovation, global competition, and political pressures that has ignited this explosive confrontation. What is happening? The conflict centers around a proposed 25% tariff on all goods entering the United States from Mexico, a move that could wreak havoc on the finely tuned supply chains upon which the automotive industry relies. For decades, manufacturers like Ford Motor Company and General Motors have optimized their operations by sourcing parts and assembling vehicles across borders. This approach has allowed them to reduce costs and remain competitive in a rapidly changing global market. Now, those carefully constructed systems face an unprecedented challenge. The situation is like throwing a wrench into a well-oiled machine. Every aspect of production, from sourcing raw materials to delivering finished vehicles, could be slowed, disrupted, or rendered more expensive. Ford Motor Company and General Motors are already grappling with the immense costs of transitioning to electric vehicles, and this added financial burden threatens to derail their plans entirely. The contrast is stark. On the one hand, these companies are making bold strides toward innovation, investing heavily in electric vehicle technology to compete with industry leader Tesla. On the other, they are confronting a political environment that seems determined to penalize their global ambitions. The proposed tariffs could drive production costs higher, potentially forcing manufacturers to pass those increases onto consumers. This means higher prices for cars, making them less affordable for the average American family. The ripple effects of such a policy extend far beyond corporate profits or consumer pricing. Local economies built around automotive manufacturing are bracing for impact. Communities reliant on factory jobs, supplier contracts, and dealership networks could face significant economic downturns. This is not just a battle of numbers, it is a fight for livelihoods, stability, and the future of an industry that has long been a cornerstone of American identity. How did we get here? To fully grasp the origins of this conflict, we must look at the decisions made by Ford Motor Company and General Motors in recent years. Both companies have embarked on a strategic pivot toward electric vehicles, aiming to secure their place in a rapidly evolving automotive landscape. This shift is not optional. It is a response to mounting pressure from competitors like Tesla, whose dominance in the electric vehicle market has captured both market share and consumer imagination. However, producing electric vehicles comes with significant challenges. Unlike traditional internal combustion vehicles, electric cars require advanced technologies and new infrastructure. Batteries, which are central to electric vehicles, demand rare earth materials and specialized production processes. These requirements come with hefty price tags, prompting Ford Motor Company and General Motors to outsource significant portions of their manufacturing to countries like Mexico and China, where labor and materials are more affordable. This decision to move operations abroad has sparked widespread criticism. Many view it as a betrayal of American workers who have been left behind as factories close and jobs migrate overseas. For workers in Michigan, Ohio, and other manufacturing hubs, the transition to electric vehicles feels less like progress and more like a threat to their way of life. Economic pressures only compound the issue. As these companies balance the need to innovate with the demand for profitability, they are walking a tightrope that leaves little room for error. The volatility of global markets, coupled with the unpredictability of government policies, adds another layer of complexity. Can Ford Motor Company and General Motors continue to push the boundaries of automotive innovation without sacrificing the very workforce that built their legacies? This question lies at the heart of the current conflict. Understanding these root causes is essential to making sense of the broader narrative. This is not merely a disagreement between companies and politicians. It is a collision of competing priorities: innovation versus tradition, globalization versus nationalism, and profit margins versus people. Why it matters to you. This battle is not an abstract struggle confined to corporate boardrooms or political debates. It is a story that directly affects your life, whether you realize it or not. If you own a car, work in the automotive sector, or care about the stability of the American economy, the outcome of this conflict will have tangible consequences. The stakes are high for consumers. Rising production costs could translate into higher prices at the dealership, putting new vehicles out of reach for many families. Imagine a world where your favorite car models become luxury items, accessible only to the wealthy. Alternatively, consider the impact of factory closures in your local community. The disappearance of manufacturing jobs does not just affect individual workers. It reverberates through small businesses, schools, and local economies that depend on those jobs for survival. The outcome of this confrontation will also shape the availability of advanced eco-friendly vehicles on the market. As Ford Motor Company and General Motors invest in electric vehicle technology, they are not just building cars, they are defining the future of transportation. Will these innovations remain accessible to the average consumer, or will they be priced out of reach due to rising costs and supply chain disruptions? Ultimately, this story is about more than cars. It is about the choices we make as a society and the values we prioritize. The balance between innovation and job preservation, between globalization and domestic stability, is one that affects us all. As this battle unfolds, it forces us to confront the question: what kind of future do we want for ourselves, our economy, and the generations to come? Trump's fiery response. When it comes to making headlines, Donald Trump has always been a master of theatrics, but this time he directed his full force at two of America's most storied automotive giants. Labeling Ford Motor Company and General Motors as traitors to the American workforce, Trump unleashed a scathing critique of their business strategies. Outsourcing jobs to foreign countries? Unacceptable. Pivoting production away from American soil? In his view, a betrayal of the trust and legacy that made these companies household names. But Trump's fiery rhetoric wasn't just talk. He vowed to impose tariffs and introduce stringent regulations aimed at bringing jobs back to the United States. Heavy taxes on goods produced abroad, increased scrutiny on foreign operations, and tighter rules governing domestic labor practices were just some of the proposals on the table. For Trump, this wasn't just a policy disagreement. It was a full-scale attack on companies that had once been symbols of American resilience and ingenuity. His stance struck a chord with a frustrated workforce, reigniting debates about loyalty, innovation, and what it truly means to support American manufacturing. Ford and GM's strategic moves. Ford Motor Company and General Motors have been battling to remain relevant in an industry undergoing seismic shifts. Their investments in cutting-edge technology, particularly electric vehicles, reflect their commitment to staying competitive in an ever-evolving market. The introduction of Ford's F-Series Lightning and General Motors' Ultium platform demonstrated bold ambitions for a future dominated by sustainable energy and electrified transportation. But these innovations come at a price. Electric vehicle production requires massive financial commitments, and these companies have faced the difficult decision to move parts of their manufacturing operations overseas. By leveraging lower labor costs and more flexible supply chains abroad, Ford and General Motors have attempted to offset the staggering expenses tied to electric vehicle development. However, this strategy has not come without consequences. Domestic factories have shuttered, leaving thousands of American workers without jobs and communities grappling with economic instability. While competitors like Tesla thrive with vertically integrated models and rapid innovation cycles, Ford and General Motors find themselves in a precarious balancing act. They must push the boundaries of automotive technology while maintaining their image as American-born brands committed to domestic manufacturing. It is a gamble that could either secure their place in the future or alienate their loyal workforce and customers. Economic implications. The potential fallout from this clash extends far beyond boardrooms and political podiums. It could hit everyday Americans where it hurts the most, their wallets and their job security. Trump's proposed tariffs would dramatically increase the cost of importing parts and vehicles, adding as much as 25% to production expenses. For automakers already grappling with thin profit margins, this would likely mean passing those costs along to consumers. Higher vehicle prices could make it even harder for working families to afford reliable transportation, while companies might be forced to reduce staff to manage rising costs. The economic ripple effects don't stop there. Communities heavily dependent on the automotive industry could face significant downturns, from layoffs at supplier plants to reduced business for local restaurants and retailers. These struggles would ultimately weaken local economies, stretching far beyond the factory gates. But the stakes aren't just financial. The conflict has reignited debates about the identity of American manufacturing. Can companies like Ford and General Motors maintain their innovative edge while staying loyal to the workers and communities that built their reputations? Or will the pressures of globalization and cost-cutting drive them to prioritize profits over patriotism? Public sentiment and political pressure. In this war of words and policy, the court of public opinion has become a critical battleground. Trump's rhetoric has struck a nerve with many Americans who feel left behind by the forces of globalization and automation. His call to bring jobs back resonates with workers who have seen their factories close and their livelihoods vanish. For them, this fight isn't just about cars, it's about fairness, pride, and a sense of security for their families. Unions, however, find themselves at an uneasy crossroads. While they share Trump's concerns about job losses and outsourcing, they also question whether his methods will deliver the promised results. Many argue that tariffs and regulations alone cannot reverse decades of industrial decline, and that more comprehensive solutions, such as workforce training programs and collaborative government policies, are needed to secure long-term stability. Meanwhile, political debates are intensifying on Capitol Hill and across the nation. This conflict has sparked larger questions about the role of government in shaping the future of industries. Should policymakers focus on creating incentives for innovation, or should they prioritize protecting existing jobs at all costs? How do we balance the push for cutting-edge technology with the need to preserve the communities and workers who have long depended on traditional manufacturing? These questions have no easy answers, but their outcomes will shape not only the automotive industry, but also the broader American economy for generations to come. Stories from the factory floor. For decades, workers took pride in his role as a cornerstone of American manufacturing, but now they are finding themselves facing an uncertain future. As production shifts overseas to cut costs, workers are left wondering what lies ahead. This is not just one person's story, it is a story shared by families and communities across the nation. When factories close, the impacts are felt far beyond the plant gates. Schools lose funding as local tax revenues dry up. Small businesses that thrived on worker patronage face shuttered doors. Families are forced to uproot their lives, seeking new opportunities that often seem out of reach. The ripple effects are undeniable, leaving lasting scars on neighborhoods once defined by industrial pride. For workers, these changes feel like a betrayal of decades of loyalty and hard work. The corporate and political battles raging above them do not just alter business strategies, they dismantle livelihoods. The human cost is far greater than any financial ledger can capture. Outsourcing versus automation. At the heart of this transformation lie two competing forces: outsourcing and automation. Outsourcing involves relocating production to countries where labor is cheaper, a strategy designed to maximize profitability. Automation, on the other hand, replaces human workers with machines, offering increased efficiency and precision. Both approaches aim to reduce costs, but they come at a significant price for American workers. Outsourcing has been a controversial topic for decades, but its consequences are becoming more pronounced. When manufacturing shifts to countries like Mexico and China, the immediate impact is the loss of jobs in American communities. Workers are left scrambling for new employment opportunities, often in industries that cannot match the wages or stability of manufacturing. This economic insecurity extends beyond individuals, affecting entire regions reliant on factory work. Automation, while heralded as progress, presents its own set of challenges. Robots and advanced machinery can produce goods faster and more accurately than humans. However, this shift eliminates jobs that once once required skilled labor. Workers who spent years mastering their craft now find their expertise obsolete. For many, the question is not just whether they will find new work, but whether they can adapt to an economy increasingly driven by technology. For the average American, these changes mean fewer opportunities to secure stable, well-paying jobs. It is not just about statistics, it is about real people struggling to maintain their livelihoods in a shifting landscape. The debate over outsourcing and automation is not merely a business decision, it is a moral and economic dilemma with far-reaching implications. The environmental angle. Amid these economic battles, a new challenge emerges: the environmental impact of the automotive industry's transition to electric vehicles. On the surface, the shift to electric cars seems like an undeniable win for the planet. These vehicles produce zero tailpipe emissions, reducing air pollution and greenhouse gases. They promise a cleaner, greener future, aligning with global goals to combat climate change. However, the production of electric vehicles is not without its challenges. Manufacturing their batteries requires rare earth materials like lithium, cobalt, and nickel. These elements are often sourced through mining practices that can cause severe environmental damage, including deforestation, habitat destruction, and water pollution. Moreover, many of these materials are mined in developing countries under conditions that raise significant ethical concerns. This creates a paradox. While electric vehicles reduce emissions on the road, their production process introduces new environmental and social costs. For companies like Ford and General Motors, balancing these conflicting interests is a monumental challenge. How can they meet the demand for sustainable vehicles without contributing to other forms of environmental degradation? For consumers, the environmental impact of their choices is becoming harder to ignore. Purchasing an electric vehicle feels like a step toward a better future, but it also raises questions about the broader consequences of the transition. The trade-offs are complex, and finding solutions will require innovation, collaboration, and a commitment to ethical practices. Policy and regulation clash. The role of government policy in shaping the automotive industry cannot be overstated. Federal initiatives, such as tax credits and subsidies, are designed to accelerate the adoption of electric vehicles. These incentives help make electric cars more accessible to consumers and offset the high cost of production for automakers. At the same time, strict emission standards and sustainability goals push companies to innovate rapidly. Former President Donald Trump, however, has been a vocal critic of these policies. He argues that they disproportionately benefit companies like Tesla, which are already established leaders in the electric vehicle market. Meanwhile, traditional automakers like Ford and General Motors face mounting pressure to comply with costly regulations. Trump contends that these policies create an uneven playing field, burdening legacy automakers while rewarding newer entrants. This regulatory environment forces companies to walk a tightrope. On one side, they must meet the ambitious targets set by policymakers to stay competitive in a global market increasingly focused on sustainability. On the other side, they must navigate the economic realities of maintaining profitability and supporting their workforce. For Ford and General Motors, this clash between innovation and regulation is more than a business challenge. It is a fight for survival. They must find ways to adapt without abandoning their core values or alienating their base of loyal customers. The stakes are high, not just for these companies, but for the entire American economy. The human cost of these transformations is profound. Workers face job insecurity, families grapple with economic instability, and communities struggle to recover from the loss of industrial hubs. As the automotive industry races toward a future defined by electric vehicles and global competition, the balance between progress and preservation remains a question without easy answers. The choices made today will shape not only the industry, but the lives of millions of Americans for generations to come. Competing with Tesla and foreign automakers. For over a century, Ford Motor Company and General Motors have been cornerstones of American industrial power. However, as the automotive world shifts toward electric vehicles, EVs, these legendary automakers are grappling with a significant challenge, catching up to disruptors like Tesla. Tesla's dominance in the electric vehicle market is no fluke. It's the result of a carefully crafted strategy. By controlling every aspect of production, from designing the batteries to assembling the vehicles, Tesla has perfected a vertically integrated supply chain. This approach not only makes production more efficient, but also helps the company sidestep many of the delays and rising costs that continue to haunt its competitors. Tesla's approach to infrastructure is another key to its success. The company's supercharger network is the largest and most reliable global charging system, giving Tesla owners the convenience and confidence to drive long distances. Ford and General Motors, on the other hand, are still working to expand their own charging networks. space. Despite their efforts, they remain far behind Tesla in this crucial aspect of EV adoption. Without the same comprehensive charging infrastructure, Ford and GM's electric vehicles may struggle to achieve the same level of convenience and widespread appeal. But it's not just Tesla that Ford and General Motors are up against. A wave of foreign automakers, companies like Toyota, Volkswagen, and Hyundai, are aggressively pursuing the electric vehicle market. These companies have decades of experience in global supply chains, and they are using that expertise to deliver high-quality, affordable, and innovative electric models. In the face of this, Ford and General Motors must not only compete with Tesla, but also fend off these formidable international competitors. The challenge for these American automakers is monumental. They must innovate quickly to stay relevant in a market where customer loyalty is increasingly tied to both technology and sustainability. Consumers are no longer just looking for reliable vehicles. They want cars that are environmentally friendly, technologically advanced, and built by companies that align with their values. This shift requires Ford and GM to adapt rapidly to a new landscape that places as much emphasis on the future as it does on tradition. In addition to technological innovation, both companies must also rebuild trust with their workforce and consumer base. Ford and General Motors built their legacies on American labor, and as they shift to electric vehicles, they must find ways to maintain their commitment to domestic manufacturing while remaining competitive. This will require a renewed focus on infrastructure development, transparent communication, and a willingness to invest in future technologies that will help them regain ground in the race to dominate the EV market. Future implications for American manufacturing. The clash between innovation and tradition lies at the heart of the challenges facing Ford Motor Company and General Motors. Both companies must decide whether they can embrace the future without sacrificing their historic commitment to American workers and communities. The stakes are monumental, not only for these two automakers, but for the entire American economy. If Ford and General Motors successfully navigate this transition, they could set a precedent for sustainable innovation, solidifying America's leadership in the global automotive industry. On the other hand, failure could lead to a diminished role for American manufacturing on the world stage. This battle will shape economic policies, job creation, and the price of vehicles for years, if not decades to come. For you, the viewer, the future of these companies is deeply intertwined with your daily life. Whether it is the price you pay for a car, the availability of jobs in your community, or the environmental footprint of your transportation choices, the ripple effects of these decisions will be felt far and wide. This is not just about the auto industry, it is about the broader economy and how it shapes your opportunities and challenges. What's the way forward? Rebuilding trust and achieving sustainable growth require collaborative efforts across the board. Policymakers, automakers, and workers must come together to ensure that the transition to electric vehicles benefits everyone. For Ford Motor Company and General Motors, this means investing heavily in domestic production capabilities. Building advanced manufacturing facilities in the United States can not only create jobs, but also address the growing demand for cutting-edge vehicles. Retraining programs for workers displaced by automation or outsourcing are another critical piece of the puzzle. By equipping employees with skills suited to the evolving automotive landscape, these companies can minimize job losses while fostering a more adaptable workforce. Balanced regulatory frameworks are equally important. Striking a middle ground between innovation and affordability is essential to keep vehicles within reach for the average American consumer. Positive outcomes are within reach if these strategies are executed effectively. A successful transition to electric vehicles would not only position the United States as a leader in green technology, but also ensure a healthier environment and a stronger economy. For consumers, this could mean more affordable, eco-friendly options that align with their values and long-term needs. The personal stakes. The choices made by Ford Motor Company and General Motors today will have a direct impact on your future. The type of vehicle you drive, the price you pay, and the environmental footprint you leave behind are all tied to the decisions being made in boardrooms and factories right now. As the electric vehicle market grows, your options will expand, but the affordability and accessibility of these vehicles depend on how well these automakers navigate this transition. Long-term benefits are at stake for everyone. A thriving automotive industry means stable jobs, robust local economies, and a cleaner planet for future generations. Imagine a world where high-quality electric vehicles are not just a luxury for the wealthy, but an accessible choice for everyday families. That is the promise these companies must work toward. Take a moment to reflect on how this story affects you. From the cars in your driveway to the jobs in your community, the ripple effects of this transition are closer than you might think. As Ford and General Motors rise to meet these challenges, the choices they make will shape the American economy, environment, and way of life for decades to come. So, what do you think about the future of American manufacturing? If you're curious about what's next, subscribe.